So let's go ahead and get started. Um, we'll welcome everybody back for lunch as they're able to make it, but I want to make sure that we're sticking to our schedule here. So once again, by way of introduction, in case you missed the previous three times, my name is Elliot Smith. I'm the Senate Bill 123 Program Director. We have the whole 123 team here with us today. I'll just quickly run through. We got Gwen Harvey, our program certification specialist, Trish Beck, the program auditor, and then we are very lucky and happy that we have our Sentencing Commission Senate Bill 123 Subcommittee Chair, Pat Colleton, here with us. So we really appreciate everybody's time being here. This is our Carelon ProviderConnect session. So we've got Emily Swansea from Carelon. She is the clinical manager. And then we also have Beth Bernasic, who's the provider relations manager. So Emily and Beth have been a joy to work with on my end. I've really appreciated their helpfulness. And, I would say to all the providers out there, they got your back. So just know that, but I'm going to turn it over to you two, Emily and Beth, and let you take it from here.
Thanks, Elliot. Beth, do you want to start with your introduction?
Sure. Hi, guys. Sorry, I said earlier, my computer's being completely weird. My video's not working. It's it's just being difficult. So I'm sorry I can't be on camera today, but I am thrilled to be able to participate with you guys again this year. I've been with Carelon previously, Vegan, previously Value Options, 6.5, 7 years now as the network rep, provider rep. I work on sentencing commission lines of business as well as block grant, SOR, problem gambling, DUI. I think that's it. Before I came into this side of it, I was a provider in treatment services in Kansas. So I've worked residential and outpatient. I did about 15 years before I shifted over. So best part of my job, I tell people all the time, is working with you guys. So please never hesitate to reach out, ask questions. If something's not working, absolutely happy to help you problem solve that.
Thanks. And my name's Emily Swansea. I am the manager of clinical services for Carelon Behavioral Health. I've been in working with you guys and working with Kansas. It'll be 17 years this next coming March. So pretty much ever since we took on the contract back in 07, I started in 08, March of 08. So I've been around for quite a while. I've known most of y'all for a long time. I initially met Beth when she was still a provider, so it was fantastic for her to come and become a colleague. We work very, very closely together, so it's easy to think of us as interchangeable. The easiest way I like to say it is I'm the yes or no lady for your authorization approvals, and Beth's the money lady. She makes sure you get paid. So that's kind of an easy separation. And I've always loved that they kept those two things separate. So it's very important in our company that the people who are making those determinations are not the people handling the funds. And I think that is a fantastic way to do business. Nice and clean. So do we have who wants to put up the presentation and drive?
I can do it if that's easier for you all. Or Beth, if you want to do it, that's fine.
Yeah, Elliot, I think that might work best.
Okay.
Just to give us the break. I know I have mine up. I'm having to call into a cell phone, so I don't have it on the device I'm in the meeting on.
Okay.
It's been for those of you who have come to this before, this has been tweaked, but there's really not a lot of new information. So most of it should be a review. If any part isn't, or we need to slow down or go back over, just interrupt us. We're very comfortable with that.
Let me get it back up. I'm sorry.
No problem.
There we go. Can you see now?
I can.
Perfect.
Yep.
Okay, so we'll go to the next.
It's being weird here. Give me a second. It won't let me advance the slides for some reason.
Of course.
My computer, it's sharing its irritation. Sorry.
Hang on one second. Let me stop share. Let me stop and close out of it and try it one more time here. All right, we back?
All right, looks like it.
Good, there we go.
Yay, and there's the advance. So,
okay.
So this is just our contact. We kind of went over most of that. So the basics. So the best way I like to kind of describe Carelon's relationship with the SB 123 contract is we own the track, but we don't have a dog in this race. And so to a portion, what we're going to go over, particularly around the requirements for authorization, clearly keep in your mind that what I require for Carelon to be able to say and put the authorization approval in may not match what is required by the commission upon auditing and everything. So what our requirements are, we're not doing a complete, full, deep dive to make sure it's 110% exactly like it's supposed to be. Mine is going to be the bare minimum. Okay. So we always remind and encourage you that if you have concerns or questions about any of the paperwork you have for this program, please reach out to Gwen and Trish to ensure, because that's who's going to audit you, not Carelon. So if you're seeing an SB 123 client for assessment or treatment services, they have to be in our system, which is called ProviderConnect. You'll also hear me reference the Connect system, because that system has multiple facing outs, but it's a single system. And so my team and I access the platform called Care Connect. The providers access Provider Connect. There's also a Member Connect and a Claims Connect. So the Connect system has lots of different ways it can be utilized. For the Kansas contract, both the braided funding and sentencing commission, we actually use a very, very small portion of our system. We don't utilize member service. We don't utilize the claims. So it's the same system. Whatever information you put in ProviderConnect, I see in Care Connect, but they just outface looking different. So if you hear one of us say, well, our side looks different, that's what we're referencing. All the data is captured exactly the same, but the outface will look a little bit different based on who's accessing the system. So all offenders have to be in the Connect system for there to be an authorization and therefore a claim to get paid. So every service that you want to be paid for doing must have an authorization in the Connects. Carelon gets our post-sentence eligibility information from Athena once a week from the Sentencing Commission, and we don't have access to Athena. So that's an important part, is we only can see what they send us to see. I can't just log into Athena and look at it myself. Carelon gets pre-sentence eligibility based on the respondent link, which is submitted by court services or corrections. So if you don't see an offender in Connects, please reach out to ISOs, corrections, sentencing commission, and Carelon to make sure we've gotten that information. All right. I think we can go to the next one, and I think Beth was going to go over that. So I think I just overstepped, which I do sometimes. Sorry, Beth.
No, you're fine. A quick note, we do walkthroughs for everybody. So if you are sitting through this and it looks completely new, or you think, oh my God, what are they talking about? We are happy to do one-on-one training sessions for you or for your team or for your facility. We do it quite often for new staff or new providers that come in or people who just need a refresher. In those cases, my preference is when you have a Senate bill member and you can actually walk through, share screen, and we do this. Like, I help you pick the areas you need to be to see what you need to see. So just know that that is an option if you need it when we're all done here. So to access ProviderConnect, I'm assuming everybody that needs to on this call has access to it, but if you need access to ProviderConnect and for some reason you can't see what we're seeing on the screen, please let me know, along with your supervisor on the email so that we can check to see if we can give you access. So how to find a member, it's the home screen that you first log into. On the left-hand side that's circled right there, it's the specific member search. You can also do the one in the middle that says find a specific member, same place. Once you click on that, you go to the screen that indicates member ID. Now, for Senate Bill 123 purposes, member ID initially is going to be the KBI number. Some people put social security number in, you can, but I can't guarantee you're going to pull up the right eligibility segment. So we strongly encourage that what you put in there is the KBI number and then the date of birth. No dashes, no slashes in those, in any of that information. For the member ID KBI number, sometimes some counties put a KS at the beginning of it. Don't put the KS at the beginning of it if we're doing the KBI number in that top box. And the as of date is going to depend on a little bit on if we're talking pre or post sentence. So for pre-sentence, the as of date is going to be your assessment date. And then for post-sentence, it can be today, or it can be their first date of service at your location. The reason why it's really important to put that in there is because now, since last January, maybe 2 Januaries ago, when we started doing the pre-sentence, we have different segments. And if you don't put in that as of date, you might get the pre-sentence segment or the post-sentence segment, which means the documents that you submit don't go to the right episode. So sometimes if you get calls from Gwen that says, hey, none of your papers are in the spot we need it, it's because they went to a different section. So that as of date is super important. We talked earlier in the call about members for pre-sentence that aren't pulling up. So that's what that as of date, if an ISO has put in the information for the date of the referral made, if they let you know that, you know what as of date to put in, and then you can submit an inquiry in that says, saw member on this different date, can you update eligibility? And we'll show you how to submit that inquiry here in a little bit. Okay, so you put all that information in and you hit search, and then the next screen says you're not able to pull a member up. So if you show an error message that says member not found, Emily referenced this earlier too, for pre-sentence, email the ISO and confirm that they've submitted the respondent form via that link that Trish and Gwen can share. And if they have, then email Carelon at the email addresses indicated. So Kansas Clinical at Carelon. Alicia, do we have Alicia's email on here? Emily, do you remember?
We do in the contact.
Later on. yeah, Alicia. And then the only reason my email is on there is because for timely waiver stuff, I just track whether or not you reached out. So I'm not adding stuff. If somebody asks about adding a member, it's Alicia that I reach out to. So, but I'm on there just so that I can track requests. If you're going to email us, it is really important to tell us if you're looking for a member for pre or post sentence, because it looks very different and the benefit is very different, and where we locate it, everything is different. We need the KBI number, the case number, the county, social security number, date of birth, all of that information if you've got it, so that we can kind of play detective and figure out what's going on. For post sentence, email the same crew, the ISO, to confirm the data is fully in Athena. If they say yes, then we get to bug Trish on the regular on what she can see in the Athena side and help us figure out why we didn't get it in our upload. Or sometimes we do have it in the upload, and Emily touched on this a little bit ago. The building of Senate Bill 123 members is entirely manual. So sometimes when we get this massive upload, an ID might be missed in the transfer process. So we just didn't catch it. If you reach out, we can see them in the upload. Alicia can request a build, easy peasy, within usually within a week of that request, depending on when it comes through. But that's why sometimes they're not in there when you expect them to be. If you're having trouble pulling a member up, or getting documents that you need, or what have you, Senate Bill, or KSSC, sorry, has said that they really do want to know kind of the struggles that are going on. So make sure that you are including them in the emails. I also do regular meetings upon request with providers to just track sentencing commission ID builds and claims issues and auth issues and all those things, just to make sure that they're not falling through the cracks. The vast majority of providers that take me up on that are the smaller providers, but I am happy to do it with anybody who would find it helpful, and that way we know for sure you're not misplacing somebody that we're trying to get pulled up. So if your member does pull up on the ProviderConnect screens, it's going to give you the demographic screen. The screen that you're seeing is our demo in our system, so you won't see the KSS. That's just what our demo pulls up, just so you know. But it has the member ID, which for Kansas Sentencing Commission is the KBI number plus a 01 at the end. That is the actual member ID. And then you've got your effective dates and expiration dates on the right-hand side. And enrollment, COB, and benefit information up there in the upper tabs. So you do want to click on that little benefit tab to make sure that the ID that you happen to pull up is showing as a post-sentence, if that's what you're expecting to see, or a pre-sentence, if that's what you're expecting to see. Because again, coverage is very different. Pre-sentence will only pay for an assessment. So if you're billing out treatment services and it happens to be a pre-sentence benefit, it's going to be a challenge for you. The eligibility dates are important too, because you can't bill outside of those. You can't request an auth outside of those. So if the dates aren't covering the dates that you're expecting to see covered, you do want to reach out so that we can confirm with Sentencing Commission what's showing up in Athena, or what our upload says, or anything like that. So before I shift it over back to Emily, do we have any questions on that stuff? Okay, perfect.
All right. So do I need an authorization for Senate Bill 123? Everything has to have one for any service that you want to get paid for. So the couple of things to really keep in mind is when you are submitting for a pre-sentence, assessment, and they're both the pre and post are the same H0001. For the pre-sentence, when you get to the last screen, and we are going to show you what these authorization screens will look like, you will indicate 0 as requested. Once Gwen has reviewed all the documents and has told me that it is approved and allowed to be approved, then I will go in and put in the 1 unit, approve 1 unit, and the authorization code. And so that is one little bit different from the pre-sentence. With the post, that what you would put a 1 there. So you'll submit the same paperwork that has always been submitted for the pre and post assessments. It's 4 documents that are required. It is the assessment summary form, the client placement agreement with the box for assessment checked, it is the clinical assessment, and it is the SASE. And so those are the 4 things required to be seen attached to that authorization request by my team in order for us to give the authorizations. The pre-sentence assessment documents are solely reviewed by the Sentencing Commission. Carelon does not review any pre-sentence stuff at all. I do all the post work. We will have, we do have an example of the pre-assessment checklist at the end as well that Gwen has so kindly provided. So all of those wonderful things coming. Additionally, you want to always make sure you are using the most updated forms, and you can confirm that by visiting the Sentencing Commission's website. And we do have the most recent link is there, and I double checked that it worked, I think Monday. So I am sure that that is the most recent October 2024 forms link. When submitting an authorization, choose all of the services or codes that you might need for that member at that level of care. So that's mostly around outpatient authorizations. But if there is the expectation that a person is going to engage in outpatient group, individual, maybe some peer mentoring if you're approved for that from Gwen, or relapse prevention, go ahead and request all of those services and ensure that all of them are marked on the client placement agreement. On occasion, when also requested, an additional or updated documents are needed, either from Carelon or from the Sentencing Commission, then you would submit that document with an inquiry. Once you put through an authorization request, unless it is just done for the wrong level of care, you shouldn't ever need to re-enter those. If we need some more information or we need another document, you would use the inquiry, and it's much more efficient than going all the way through an authorization request. So the most common form that our authorizations are required to have in order for Carelon to improve is the client placement agreement. So for detox services, for the initial 21 days of 3.3 for the case, not at your facility, but for that person's entire case, for levels 3.1, level 2 IOP, and level 1 outpatient services, the only document I am going to look at in order to give authorization is the client placement agreement. I don't need anything else for those services. The single service that's an exception are any readmits to level 3.3 or CSR after that initial 21 days. And so if you have an offender that's been delivered 21 days of level 3.3, and you determine that it's clinically indicated for an additional 7 for discharge planning, wrapping up the services, and appropriate step down, those have to have clinical that supports the medical necessity. That is the only time medical necessity comes into play in this program. Everything else is just based on the client placement agreement and them being completed fully and correctly for Carelon's purpose. So on our slides, I have highlighted what I have to have. This is the bare minimum. Please do not hear me say you only have to complete what's highlighted. You should have all of it completed, but what I'm going to look for, what I have to have in order to say yes, is going to be what I have highlighted in yellow. So the most common reason I can't just approve a service or approve a service for the full date range that was requested is this agreement date. And so underneath those boxes, that very first line says this agreement is entered into on blank day of blank month, comma, blank year. By and between the provider this and the or at the supervising agency, that's corrections, and then the provider and the provider street address, that's particularly for our entities that have more than one location. And then that the current offender's full legal name or the full name is on this form. This highlighted documentation has to match exactly with Connects or I can't authorize it. So if your agreement date says October 4th and you are requesting an authorization starting October 1st, I cannot approve the 1st through the 3rd until that CPA date's updated. All right, the next part is just the services. Any service that you're going to want to deliver should have a check on it. All right, so if you know that this person might need detox and intermediate and then probably reintegration, mark all 3. If you're an outpatient provider, you're not able to provide detox, it shouldn't be marked. I will still approve if more things are marked than they need to be, but if it's not marked on here, I cannot approve the service. And then the second most common reason is the CSO ISO signature. There's a spot that says printed, and then there's a spot that says signature. If it only has the name next to the print, I cannot authorize it. If it is typed in there twice, I can take the electronic signature of the name type twice. But it needs to be next to the signature from my point of view. So that's the client placement agreement from Carelon's point of view on what's going to be required. Are there any questions or comments or anything around that document?
Hey, Emily,
Yes, ma'am.
I just want to reiterate the fact that, Elliot, if you could back up to the front page of that CPA, those top 3 boxes will never change. No matter where they are in services, once they've started treatment and the expiration date and the sentencing date, case number, KBI number, all that stuff, those boxes, once they have started treatment, will never change. So anytime you have to do a new CPA, don't touch those. That's all.
Thank you, Trish. And to the point, that's the reason Carelon uses the agreement date, is because that the other stuff is supposed to stay static. It should not be adjusting with depending, but them entering into an agreement with you may not begin until they've been in that case for 6 months or 8 months. Thank you. That's an excellent call out, Trish.
And I just want to point out too, while we're here, that, Emily was talking about the provider street address. So the CPA is tied to the location. So if you are not authorized and licensed to provide a certain modality at that location, it should not be checked on the CPA. Because the CPA is tied to your location, and it's a contract between the provider and the supervising agency to provide a certain service. So we want to make sure that if people are engaging in a step down level of care, right? They start out at 3.3. Maybe they're going to go into reintegration. Those might be in the same location. So you can easily have that on the same CPA. If they're going to go to IOP, then at another location, I know people hate this and I get it, but I'm sorry. It has to be a new CPA because it's a different location. So I will say we are aware of the challenges around CPAs. I'm working on trying to figure out some sort of electronic signature solution, some kind of digital or online solution, but for the time being, this is what we got. So
Awesome.
I have a question.
Yes.
And I know you covered the signature. Could you cover that quickly again? Because I think I missed it.
Oh, sure. So, and again, really important that I'm highlighting this. This is what Carelon needs to approve. The Sentencing Commission's expectation is every single one of these lines should have something in it. But what I'm needing to see, if a provider has sent me this form, I'm going to assume they're aware that that person is there. What I don't know is that coordination occurred with the ISO. So that's why that signature at the
Emily, you cut out and ended up muted somehow.
Yeah, I'm that kind of talented, Elliot. I am that kind of talented. So, but that the signature is what from the ISO is what I'm needing to ensure that there has been that kind of coordination. And so with that, there's again, I need either an electronic signature or an actual signature.
Okay.
And then might I interrupt treatment providers who are on the conference? Please don't understand that to mean that you don't have to sign the CPAs. Okay. So please, please be sure that you are signing the CPAs. Okay.
Exactly.
Yeah. Because on auditing, that will get sent back to you if there's not provider signatures on documents. Okay. So sorry for interrupting, but I just wanted them to hear that.
Absolutely, Gwen. And that is that real differentiation between what I need for an authorization is very different than what is required for you to have in your files for the Sentencing Commission.
And the type signature is not okay, correct?
If it's the only if the only thing I have is where it says name print and it has it printed out there, I need it printed a second time next to the signature line. And
Okay.
that would be an electronic signature.
Okay. And does that work for Gwen as well?
Electronic signatures, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Electronic signatures, just not like block printing or that kind of stuff. So, and you know that there's a DocuSign app that's pretty easy to use and that type of thing. But yeah, digital signatures, please. Thank you.
Thanks.
Good question, Kevin.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Anything else? All right. Well, I'm going to let Beth take it away with entering the authorizations into the or was that how we were going to do it, Beth? I cannot remember now, ma'am.
You're doing off. I'm doing look it up later.
There we go. Okay. Thank you. See, like I said, we work very closely, sometimes too much.
Yes.
All right. So, steps to entering the auth. So once you find the member, once you've got the right segment going, the next thing you're going to do is click the enter auth / notification request. And so these are going to be the next screens that you're going to see. Once you click that button, it'll take you to where you acknowledge the disclaimer. Again, you just are going to click next at the bottom of that. So then it will be selecting the location. Some providers will only have one. Some of our providers have a whole lot. It is very important that you select the correct location for the services that you're requesting. If you've got a male and female location, make sure you've selected the right one for a female offender versus a male offender. Otherwise, I'll have to void it and you'll have to go in and do it again. All right, so then we got the correct provider selected. We're going to click next. Now we're going to complete the service header. And so the first thing we're going to talk about is that top left box. It is the requested start date. This is the first day you want to bill. So ideally, it's going to be the day that they admit or start those treatment services. This defaults to the day that you're entering the auth. So if you're entering it after the fact or before the fact, please make sure you've changed that requested start date. The next is the level of service. This is going to be inpatient / HLOC / specialty for detox 3.3, 3.1, and IOP. You will select outpatient for your level 1 outpatient services and for the assessments. You will then attach the document like we talked about. I need a CPA for just about everything for subsequent 3.3 admissions or CSR. I also need current clinical. For the assessments, it's those DAP documents, all 4 of them. Senate Bill 123 Assessment Summary Form, SASE, Clinical Narrative, and CPA with the assessment box marked. Once you've attached the documents you need, we click Next. And then this slide is just it's a shot of everything I've just said. And we'll make sure to get this out. Anyone who is doing these kind of for the first time, or they only do it every once in a while, I would encourage you just to maybe print this slide out so that you can make sure you know which one's needed for what, and it just makes it as a quick reference. All right. Every request should have an attachment. We've kind of gone over what those should be. And then we'll click Next.
Okay. Emily, there's a question in the chat. Do you want to wait till you're done to address
those? Go for it now. I'm an in the moment person.
All right. So Justin Moore is asking, okay, so with these new changes, we will now send CPAs multiple times with clients, such as intermediate, RT, and OT. You mean outpatient? Maybe you mean outpatient.
Yes, if the locations that they're delivering the services changes. Some of our providers, it's all at the same address. So then a single CPA would be sufficient. If our provider only provides detox services, then they would have to have a new CPA for then any of the other. It just depends on what each location is providing.
So in other words, if you already have a CPA with those modalities marked on it for that location within that time frame, no need to do another CPA.
Correct.
Okay. Does that help, Justin?
Okay, then there was a question about the PowerPoint slides. they will be available, excuse me, Emily, they will be available on our website, Trish, what, within a week or two after this, usually?
Yeah, usually.
Okay.
And anyone who wants the Carelon deck, just email Beth or I'll send it out. I have no problem with that.
Oh, sorry, Elliot. If I'd have scrolled down, I'd have seen that you responded to that. My bad. Excuse me. Okay, I'm out.
All right. So the next part, the service header, you're going to see a box where it says attending physician. So again, we're a very large company and the majority of our contracts are commercial health plan contracts. And so they include medical, dental, mental health, substance, everything. For our little world of Kansas, we don't. We just have SUD. And so the attending physician is not what's important. What should be put in this box is if there's any issue with me being able to give you an authorization so you can get paid, I need to know who to reach out to about it. So if there's an issue with the paperwork, if the CPA is missing a date or is missing a checkbox, I need to know who to notify about that. So that's whose name should go in that box, and that phone number should be who I should be getting in contact with. Diagnoses, this should be the SUD diagnoses as primary because that's what we're doing as SUD services.
And Emily, we do have another question in the chat. Since detox is not a scheduled treatment, what is the timeline for detox authorization and what documents are required other than CPA?
No other documents required other than a CPA.
And a timeline, how long does...
The timeline for Senate Bill 123 is not based on authorization. It is based on claim submission. I will approve any authorization that I get, even if it says 2018. You ain't going to get paid for it, but I'm going to approve it. So that's again kind of that differing is we don't manage the auth submissions. To that point, we also don't have a time frame for response. So for the providers that are also in the braided funding, the block grant, SOR, problem gambling, yeah, those SUD services, my team has 24 hours to respond to every single one that we get. That's not the case with these. So my aim is within 48 hours. Usually I'm on top of it a little bit more, but as we get stretched with staffing or other, the braided funding implementation was a bit of a mess. Those might hit differently, but as far as the claim submission, it's been 45 days from the date of the service. And again, anytime there's issues with paperwork or IDs being in the system, we just need to kind of know about that. And Beth will handle the request for timely waivers. Again, all we need to know is that there was the documentation attempts. Like, you know, we were trying to find it in Athena. Maybe the data wasn't coming over to Carelon. Maybe it got missed the first time, and so we didn't build the ID. Those types of things are what most often is what holds it up. The rest of the auth, it should be fairly simple. For medical, you can put none. Social, you can just put none. Any kind of notes, like this is really just, again, these will be the ones that the system wants you to put some answer for it to move forward. But no, we're not expecting you to be diagnosing them medically. All right, and then you click next. This next slide, I'm going to say, and Beth, keep me honest, is what you will see for outpatient authorizations.
Yes. Real quick, can we before we move from this slide, that functional assessment box, it's the one, third one down, that is only required to be filled out if you are requesting an assessment authorization. You can skip it otherwise. So if you don't have the SASB information, or you can't find it because you didn't give all that information out to the member and to us, that's fine. You can skip that section and then just put your note in that says please see attached CPA for services, or whatever works for you. Sorry.
No, perfect. Thank you. Okay. So next, when it's an outpatient authorization, you'll need to add those modality service codes. And if you just click to the next one, Elliot, it'll kind of show you, it opens up this little box. You just put a check mark next to the ones that you're wanting, and then click save. Is it still true, Beth, that for relapse prevention group, the H0026, they need to key that one in?
Yeah, so sorry about that. That's on the next screen. So once you click the save button on where you guys were just at, it'll populate onto this screen, and then you'll have to key in the H0026 at the bottom underneath the rest of the codes that populated. We have not been able to get that bug fixed. So, and it is full disclosure, if you forget it, you can absolutely email me and say, hey, Beth, we forgot to add this relapse prevention. Can you do it? It's an easy add. So I don't mind going in and doing it. As long as the relapse prevention is marked on the CPA, it's easy, no big deal. But it will deny for services if you don't have the authorization on there.
Yeah.
Do you want me to cover places of service, Emily?
Yes, I'll let you hit that one.
So the place of service in the red box, so that's what you guys bill at. So office is the most common, that's 11. Community mental health center is fine. If you put non-residential substance abuse facility, that's fine too. Like whatever it bills out at, that's what they're looking for the place of service. On the right-hand side is the visit and units, and we do strongly encourage you to max out your request for those. So on the authorization and reference guide that's available on our website, it tells you your maximum for each service that you can ask for at a time. For outpatient group, the maximum that you can enter into the system is like 900, and sorry, I'm trying to find my note real fast. I think my information's old. 939, I think, something like that.
No, they can do 2496.
Sometimes it will tell them that it's over what they can ask for. So if you put in the 900, if you put in 600, I know Emily's team tries to catch that and adds the 2400 on our end so that you don't have to submit another auth request. I don't know that we've had anybody that did 2,400 units of outpatient group in the 18 months.
Yeah.
But just so you know, we are trying to max it out for you so that you don't have to mess with it a second time. And it is something that I again can update on the back end if you're coming close to being over, so that you don't have to submit another auth because you're approved. We're good with that, as long as it's same case and all that good stuff.
Yeah. So for outpatient level 1 services, the way we've set up the auth parameter is it's always going to auth for a 2-year period of time. And we're going to try to approve the absolute max. I definitely always make sure it's 999 for the group. If I catch it and remember, I do the 2496. But the reason we're doing that is you should only ever have to submit it once. And so if you're treating an offender, an outpatient, they need, they have a situation that starts to worsen. They need additional support and care, and they go up to inpatient, and they spend 21, 28 days in an inpatient, and then they are returning and continuing service. You don't need to request additional services. You already have the auth on file. So ideally, you should only ever have to request level 1 services one time per case. If they get a new case, that's a whole new segment. You need to do a whole new authorization. Everything's got to be redone because it's a new CPA, it's new documents, it's a new effective and term date. So that's submitting auths. Any questions over the submission aspect before we move on to checking them? All right, stop us if you need to, and I'll turn it over to Beth.
So a quick note about that second case in auth, because this is a pretty common deal. So on our end, every case will have its own segment, but it's harder for you guys to see that on your end, and it does share auth. So if the member had a case, and then halfway through their current case, they got a second case, happens a lot. When they start their second case, their eligibility date will adjust in the system. You do have to submit a new CPA, but when you submit the auth, it's going to tell you you already have an auth for this time period. Do you want to do a discharge or do you want to do a concurrent? And the answer to that is concurrent, so that you can put in your new information and start your new time period, if that makes sense. So that's same goes for pre and post sentence. So if there's a pre-sentence, if you put in a pre-sentence assessment auth, and then the member comes to you for outpatient post-sentence, then when you go in to put your auth in, it's going to say you already have an auth in the system. Do you want to do a discharge or concurrent? Again, answer is concurrent, so that you pull all to the same one. I see Robin. Robin, you have a question?
Yeah, I do. For the number of units, it's 0 for pre-sentence, and that's where it's going to be 1 for post-sentence for H001.
Yes.
Yep.
Okay.
0 for pre-sentence, 1 for post-sentence. Yep.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. So then the easy way to check it, we covered how to pull a member up. So you pull the member up and you want to see whether or not your authorization has been approved. Then on that same demographic screen, instead of doing the submit an auth, you're going to view an auth. So once you click that button, it's gonna, you scroll down the page and there's a date range. So you want to make sure that the service from and through are the date range that you want to look for, and then hit search. And it's going to take you to authorization search results. So common question, you see the blue hyperlink and then you see a little letter underneath it. You guys don't get letters, so that will take you nowhere. But you do want to click on the blue hyperlink. The hyperlink will take you to the screen that shows you auth summary and auth details. So you click on that. There we go. The auth details tab right next to the summary is where all the info you're looking for is. So your submission date is listed there. Your dates of service is listed there. And then your visits requested and approved are located there. So when you're looking at the visits requested and approved, requested is going to be the number that you indicate. That in our screen, it's 5 out of 5. So if you asked for 5 units, if it says /0, it is not approved. If it says 5/2, then the guess is that something has happened that you don't have access to all of their service units. So we talked about earlier, IOP, higher levels of care, are a shared max through the case, right? So if a member's been in for a while under one case, then they may or may not have units left for those higher levels of care. So you definitely want to check that section to make sure, you might have asked for 100 units for IOP, but only been given 50 because that's all that was left on the case.
And to that point, I will approve the max allowed remaining per the case. And so if you have an IOP request that you see is authorized for 65 days or 65 hours, it's because 65 hours remains on the case. If you put in and these are the only two that this comes up regularly, if you put in a 3.1 request and it is approved for 32 days, that is because they received the previous at a previous time in the case, they've already been delivered those other days. Always feel encouraged to reach out to me and double check or anything. I am fallible. I do make mistakes. And so if you think I've entered it incorrectly, or you think this happens a lot too. If you think it's supposed to be on a second case and you're seeing that I'm only providing a minimal amount, definitely reach out, because what could have happened is we never got information that the case ended 5 months in and a new case started. And so we just always want to make sure we've got the right stuff. So I'm always going to put the auth for the maximum that we can per the cases.
And as Emily mentioned, you can absolutely email us and say, hey, we get this pretty regularly, actually. We have an assessment schedule. Can you make sure that there's not already one in the system? Or are there any units left for IOP? And we can tell you that. We can't necessarily tell you who did it or when it happened, but we can tell you, yeah, there are units available. Go ahead and submit what you need to. And if you are going to need to ask for an update on an eligibility segment, or you need to add documents, you can absolutely do that in this next section. So on that demographic screen, very handy screen, do a lot from it, there is a send inquiries button. So that goes to Emily's team. And then if I need it, she forwards it on to me on my end. So submit an inquiry. It's going to ask who you are, like who's submitting the inquiry in that little red box, the first box, the contacted name, and then you can type in whatever you need us to know or what your question is in the notes section. So in cases like that, you can say, authorized 5 units, but this should be a second case, started on whatever date it was. You can, if Gwen has asked for additional documents for an authorization, if Emily's team has asked for additional documents for an authorization, this is where you can submit all of that information. And in the little notes section, you just put requesting or requested documents for KSSC attached, or requested documents for authorization attached.
It is imperative that you have the right segment selected. The attachments, those segments are like file folders in the cabinet. Documents that are put in one file folder will not automatically jump to another folder in the file cabinet. So you've got to make sure you've put it in the right segment.
And that's that as of date that we talked about at the beginning. That's how you know that you're under the right segment. That as of date and that eligibility segment date is the best way for you to know which one you're putting it under.
And then I might just add to that, and this doesn't happen a lot, or it's happened sometimes and I have to go la 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 like I didn't see it. Just give that paperwork one last look over before you submit it, to please make sure that it is the correct client's documents going into that folder or, that segment or whatnot, because, yeah, that's a problem having Johnny's paperwork in Joe's file, so to speak. So, yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway.
And to Gwen's point with that, this system is made for like HEDIS and NACQ like requirements. So nothing gets deleted out of the Connect system. if the wrong attachment is sent for the incorrect offender, we actually have to leverage our IT department in order for that to get removed and avoid the HIPAA violation. So it really is an important thing, and it does, it causes us to leverage out our IT department. We can't delete any once it's entered in Connects, it is in Connects for its life. So, and that's the safeguard to where, because if for all of you that had the pleasure of utilizing the KCPC, you know that someone could end up deleting that whole file. And then no one knew how it happened. And then the help desk had to get in and try to find it and resend it out and it was a mess. So the Connect system, on the bright side, it'll keep all of our errors. So
You also have a Leah. Is it Leah? Is that how you say your name? You have a hand raised, Emily.
It's Lee, but that's
fine.
Lee,
I'm sorry, my bad.
That's all right. So in our district, we're having both of the cases, we're finding that both of the cases are sentenced at the same time. So that wouldn't be one of these instances where you could run them concurrent, correct? Because you can't have more than one case being billed, if that makes sense. Like they're getting 2 Senate cases at their sentencing. So then we're trying to, because Trish and I have spoke about this before, the most recent case number has to be the one that we use. We can't run both of those cases. They don't get both times, essentially.
So
Yeah, so that's always a case in which we ask the Sentencing Commission to tell us what they want us to do.
right. So basically, I don't think Carelon really pays attention too much to the case numbers. Oh, good. I'm glad Emily's
That would
saying,
be true.
nope, we don't. So they're actually just looking at the effective date, which is the sentencing date, unless they start treatment. So even if Lee, like for instance, we've talked about, and everybody else, we've talked about 2 cases at the same time, or maybe an overlap or something, Carolyn has no idea that there may be a second case, not a clue. That's why it's important for the ISOs to contact me so I can let them know, oh, hey, by the way, we need to turn out this first case. We have started a new case with a new effective date. I mean, otherwise, they would think that the termination date is still based off that first case that they've ever gotten. Am I correct, Emily? Beth?
yes, ma'am. 100%.
Oh, good. Yay! I was right. Okay, good. Does that make sense?
100%.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Cool. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, the only time we really look at case numbers is if somebody says, no, there's a second case, and we need to hunt to see what the which paperwork we've got.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah.
Yeah, that's the only time. Is if I got a CPA and it's like the effective date that I have in Connects is say 2024, but the CPA I received says that treatment started in 2018. That's when I might look and see that we got the right case and the right paperwork. But yeah, I think you can go to the next slide. And so that's where Beth was saying you can put the little note and attach your document for whatever you're needing in the inquiry. And then y'all can submit it. A thing about these inquiries, they go one way. So I'm able to, we can respond to an inquiry to you guys. We can't create an inquiry to you guys. So we can only respond to them.
So, question from me. Okay, so we were talking about pre-sentence assessments and the eligibility form. If this is where they would put their inquiry and say, hey, you guys, I'm looking for a pre-sentence assessment. I think the eligibility form says this date, but it's actually on this date. Is this the area you're talking about?
Yep.
Okay, cool.
Yep. So that's why we're saying
Yep,
if
as long as they
make,
can pull it up, they can put a note in there. Yep.
Yep.
Okay.
So if they say like, hey, and that's where we say if you don't know when they're going to do it, just go ahead and communicate to the provider the referral date that was used on that form, because that's the date we're going to use in our system. And so if it turns out they had to reschedule, they weren't able to come, whatever may have happened, you can just send an inquiry and saying, hey, the assessment's actually going to take place on the 21st, not the 16th. And we will just change that. And it takes our eligibility department usually within 24 to 48 hours to make those changes.
And I think that's why I also try to emphasize to the CSOs and ISOs when they do an eligibility form to print it out so that they have the information there in front of them in their files, so that if something happens, they can let the provider know, well, I sent it in and I used this date, so this is how they can search for it in ProviderConnect. So that's cool. Thank you.
All right, and I think the next slide is our last one. This is just again for the KSSC auditing pre-sentence documents. This is the form that Gwen had put together. Again, we don't have anything to do with the pre-sentence, and so when you do submit an inquiry and it says documents per Gwen's request, you'll see the response from me. I will respond with how many attachments came through the inquiry and to reach out to them with any direct questions. And that's just because I do want to make sure I'm able to let you know, hey, this is how many attachments actually came. In case you thought you had sent 3 and I'm telling you only 1 is there, it kind of will let you know, oh goodness, maybe I need to try to resend those again. So these are all of our contacts. So again, Beth says the money, she gets you paid. I say get the authorizations approved, and Alicia manages all of the eligibility. And bless her, because managing the pre-sentence, post-sentence, multiple cases, she is one person that's doing it all, and she does it really well. Then for just general communication, we have our Kansas Clinical. We have that because whether or not I'm employed, Beth's employed, Alicia's employed, this email is going to be looked at every single day by somebody, no matter what. So it's a good catch-all just in case you're not sure who to send something to.
Awesome. Well,
On a
thank you,
similar
Emily
note,
and Beth.
oh, sorry, Elliot.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
I was just going to point out, so like on the contact information, the phone number for me is the cell phone for Carelon. You cannot contact me through the 800 number anymore. You can only get me on the 877-213-3562 number. The other number, when they changed phone systems, so if you had that old number for me, that was the 866 tie-in, don't call it because I can't get the voicemails from it.
Yeah, or the 785-338. That number for Beth is no longer active either. Yeah. So yeah, we changed phone systems at the same time we changed the braided funding. It was a real fun summer.
Does Sarah have a question?
I do, yes. Just kind of circling back on my question earlier about clinical updates for clients that have assessments that are older than a year. Since these clients only get the one assessment to be paid for through Senate bill, how should we go about billing on a new assessment for a client that needs to have a whole new assessment done because their assessment's over a year old?
Leah, do you want to answer that question?
Yeah.
Okay, and Emily?
I was gonna say that's it. So that's where it's not, we don't have a dog in this race. We just own the track. So that's anything that's a policy or procedural question has to be answered by the Sentencing Commission. Carelon we don't have a say.
Yeah. So yeah, I guess that's my dog to speak up for, sadly. Unfortunately, at this time, there is no way to bill for another assessment on a Senate bill case. So if it's more than a year old, we understand that that's a very tricky spot. The best thing I can tell you is if the client is engaged in treatment and maybe needs a higher level of care, and that's why they would need an update or a new assessment if they've been engaged with you, maybe billing it as an individual session. With that way you're at least getting some reimbursement. I'm very aware that it's not the same.
Yeah, I mean, Gwen has said in the past for like clients that have like absconded or have done well and then relapsed and might need to get some additional services, but we need that ASAM update to go ahead and bill it as an individual session. I didn't know if maybe we could bill just like completing a whole new assessment as an individual session just to get some sort of reimbursement. Because I mean, an update takes a lot less time than like a whole assessment does.
Right. Most, Sarah, what I would suggest you do is reach out to us because there's a lot of, I don't even know the correct word, a lot of idiosyncrasies with, well, who did the original assessment? Were they in services? Were they, there's a lot of kinds of things. And then for treatment provider, balancing the KDAD's requirements with some of what we asked for and some of that kind of thing. And so, as you saw when Stephanie presented today as well, is I think some of what's happening is providers are just redoing the whole thing. A lot of times there's not a need for that because there are certain dimensions within ASAM criteria dimensions that stay pretty static, right? Yeah. Most of the time you're going to be updating 1, 5, and 6 for the most part, right?
Yeah.
And so, exactly. Our main thing is it was like a rash of them. It was crazy where we had judges requesting updates to assessments. They were asking providers to go into the jail and do it. And the assessment had been done a couple months ago. And it was a lot. And so, first of all, it's a lot to put a client through. And secondly, to be asking of a provider, right? So, again, just using your clinical judgment, like you mentioned, doing an update is pretty reasonable to, even if you're not going to get reimbursed for that, I get it, right? But to do what's right for the client, that doesn't take a whole lot of time, honestly. And then thinking about what we're putting the client through, there's really no need to run them through the whole entire thing most of the time, right? So I guess my main message is if it's just super, super tricky and you're not quite sure how to navigate it, please just reach out. Sometimes,
okay, fair enough.
Yeah, sometimes the three of us, Elliot, Trisha, and I, we got to get together going, okay, let's see now, And so it is, not the optimum scenario and situation, and we are aware of that. And so, but that was a really good question.
And
thank you.
That's partially why the question came up in the chat before. If a person is engaged in services and then the same provider receives a request for a Senate bill assessment, do they need to do a whole new assessment? And I said, no. make sure that there, you might need to do an update. You'll need to do a CPA, and you do the assessment summary form, make sure the funding gets switched over, probably from apps or block grant, whatever, to sentencing commission. But my point of view, let's hold on to that one assessment that they get per case, right? Because who knows what's going to happen in 18 months with this individual. They might disengage from treatment, abscond, whatever, and then need to come back into treatment. And then if we've handled it that way, now they still have access to that one assessment that they really need versus when they were engaged in treatment in the past. So I know that's a little bit of a tangent, Sarah, from what you were asking, but I just wanted to say that too, kind of for everybody's information. So good question though. Any other questions?
No, but I have something to throw in there too. I might as well throw in something.
Uh-oh.
I'm feeling
She just
left
feels
out.
left out of the party.
I am. No, I just wanted to say to any treatment provider that may have a walk-in, always keep in mind they may not want their ISO to know where they are. Just a thought. So if you think that there's any kind of criminal related reason why they're there, reach out. We can always look them up, see if they've got a case, just to avoid you doing an assessment on someone you think is just a walk-in or whatever, when really they've already had one. So it's just one of those things, just another one. Okay, I'm done.
I'm trying to think of how to articulate my question. I still feel I'm so new. I mean, I haven't even had a client yet for SB 123 or a DUI client. So hearing all these questions, and the length of time for the assessment being a year. So the first assessment and then the post-assessment, how often do we get the post-assessments? And does there have to be a year in between the pre-assessment and the post-assessment? Does that make sense? Do you get paid for the post-assessments?
Okay, we're not saying there needs to be a year between the two, Christy. So what is trying to balance out what KDADS is asking for per your license for treatment providers licenses, and then the rash of all kinds of requests to assessment providers and treatment providers to update the assessment, update the assessment, update the assessment. And we had several times where it just had been a couple months before, a couple months where the pre-sentence assessment, for example, had been done and that type of thing. So that's why we're just trying to bring some light to the subject and some clarity to navigating through that. Okay.
And that makes sense.
Yeah.
So if somebody comes to me and it's a post-test, I would get paid for it. Like, let's say that it's only 6 months.
Christy, you'll either do a pre-sentence assessment or a post-sentence assessment. It's not like a post-test after treatment kind of thing like that. For each case, they get one assessment. That assessment will either be pre-sentence before that person is sentenced or post-sentence after their sentencing. So both won't occur at the same, within the same case. Each individual should only have one of those.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. And sorry about the terminology too.
It's tricky and there's no worries. And when you get one, just, if you get lost, that's okay. Just reach out to us and we can walk you through it. Because I think somebody said this, it's a lot easier when you actually have the client and you have the thing, and then we can just kind of walk you through it. When it's all hypothetical, it's a lot more confusing.
Okay.
Can be. Absolutely. Yeah. Yep. We're here for you, Christy. So don't stress and don't worry. Okay. We have that happen frequently where, a new provider, gets approved and does all that. And then there's a, lull before they get a referral and they're like, oh man, because they've slept from the time that they did training and went through it, right? And I'm not laughing because I think it's funny. It's just a lot of us, learn by doing and that kind of thing. Plus, there's a little bit of anxiety with, you don't want to make a mistake and all of that. And so when the time comes, and we've had it happen, providers will reach out and we will do a coaching call with you. We'll walk you through the process again, review it. And I think it'll, like Elliot said, when you actually have all of it right there, or even ahead of time, say, hey, I just got a call, I'm scheduling someone, and that type of thing. So I just want you to know that we will walk beside you with all of it. And so no worries, okay?
Okay, well, I usually learn really well from mistakes. I usually make a lot of them, but that's how I learn.
Sure. And too, with you doing assessment, you're an assessment only provider. I mean, we're covering a lot of ground today, so that a lot of it doesn't apply to you. However, knowing how the referral process works and treatment and some of that kind of thing, because you're going to be kind of that front end of that, right? And those referrals and some of that. So it is important for you to kind of have some knowledge of the process, once they're done with you, so to speak. But anyway, yeah.
Okay. I appreciate that. Thank you, Gwen.
Okay, you're welcome.
Well, I really want to thank Emily and Beth for your help, for volunteering to do this session, and for everything that you do for the Sentencing Commission and for our providers. We truly appreciate it, and we're very lucky to have you on our side. So thank you very much. We'll take a little bit of a break here. We got one more session for you starting at 3 o'clock. So we'll have another session supervising 123, 123 plus, and raft offenders. That session will be led by Trish Beck, as well as Spence Cohn from OJA and Jessica Daltmeyer from KDOC. So we'll take a short break here, and then we'll be back for our last session of the day. So thank you, everybody.
Thank you, everyone. Always such a pleasure to be involved.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.